the audience. So with that, I might pass it over to David and Melita to tell us about Ceres Tag. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe we start with a quick little presentation about what it is that we're here to discuss, and then we'll take it from there. So if that's all right. So do you mind if I stand up? Just right. I just feel I present better if I can move a bit, you know. So Melita and I are the co-founders of Ceres Tag. For those who are not aware, it is a provenance and animal welfare opportunity for as far as the information platform is concerned. We are proudly sponsored by Meat and Livestock Australia, donor company, the Queensland Government, and CSIRO and James Cook University is certainly our technology partners. Just before I start, could I just have a hands up so I understand who the audience I target if you've got a startup of your own? Right, okay, and keep your hand up if you're doing products, not services. Yep, great, no worries, okay. It helps me. So the reason why we started off on this journey is, Melita's family in particular had a cattle farmers, about 800 head in the South Burnett part of Queensland. We had a bit of a change of career direction, and we went back to the farm and we started to look at opportunities that we could get involved in the agriculture industry. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the things that we're looking at is the fundamentals about population growth. Everyone's heard about the UN. It's going from 7 billion to 10 billion by 2050. And of course, there are lots of other factors like the rising of the Chinese economy. People were hitting that $35,000 US salary per year. When that happens, you typically start to eat a lot more red meat. So we knew that the reaction of knowing more about where our food is coming from was just going to get more intense, not less intense. And with that, we needed to derive some better information and more timely information than what we currently had. And at the time, there was nothing really on the market. There was a couple of collars, there was some boluses, but there was lots of engineering issues with each one of those. And fortunately, that's some of the background that Melita and I brought to the table, is thinking about it from the actual producer's point of view and an engineering point of view, and how those two cross-sections come together. So one of the things that we needed to improve was the automation of data. Right now, if you're recording for your livestock, you've got to write down everything or you type it in. You actually manual data entry. And come on, we're at nearly 2020, and yet globally, we're still doing that. There's hardly any automation of data for animals on board, collecting that health and that traceability type information. We saw it a bit like going from the mobile phone to the smartphone, and we knew it had to be small, had to be light, had to last for a long time because we don't want it to change batteries, and we wanted it to be accredited to international identification standards. So there was a fair bit of criteria there we had to start working on. And that's why we had to have people like CSIRO involved as well. So what's in the Ceres Tag? Certainly GPS tracking is first and foremost, and really at the centre of this. Because at the moment, tracking of animals, of what's available at the moment, you might be able to do it, but you've got to do it with terrestrial towers, and you do it with Internet of Things, NB-IoT, LoRaWAN, Sigfox, or quite a number of others. But they have big issues from all sorts of reasons, not just power, but also the connectivity. If you take your animals outside of their reach, then you start to lose that continuous collection of data. So one of the first things we identified is that we had to have that by satellite. So how do you do that? Well, there's only really one way, and that's low Earth orbit satellite. And the reason why is low Earth orbit satellites, for those who don't know the difference between GEO and LEO satellites, Geosatellites sit out about 25,000 kilometres out in space. LEO, which is low Earth orbit satellites, are only about 500 kilometres out, and they're only about the size of a shoebox, but they only take small packets of data and low energy. So they're very specific for this particular purpose and lots of other purposes as well. The other thing we have is the accelerometers, so that we can actually start to use algorithms to determine when there's a health benefit or if there's a change in activity. And some of the things that we also had to fix was high retention. Right now on identification tags, we get a very low retention. It's number one complaint from farmers is tags keep falling off. So we fix that. No battery change. So the battery in these tags lasts for 10 years. So that was one of the critical factors. So we don't have to touch the tag at all. You put it on the animal, that's it. You'll get the lifetime of the animal's data. We can update the tag. So if there's new diseases or if there's a change of activity that you particularly want to pick, we can use algorithms to actually determine that as well. And we are able to update the tags through Bluetooth. And of course, the current identification is RFID, and we put one of those in here as well, so that it exists and you can use it with all the existing infrastructure that's already on your farm. So we're looking to enhance the current system, not disrupt it. I'll be over in South Africa in October, and certainly one of the big things there is theft and wandering. You'll see that over on the right-hand side. In South Africa, they've tried to use other smart tags, and it's not just the animals they steal the towers as well. So they take the steel and all the rest of it. So really they take everything that's there. So with our particular tag, they don't have to worry about that. It's a fair sized market we're targeting. It's 1.2 billion cattle in the world. But of course, this can be used on, not just beef cattle, but dairy cattle and sheep and goats, etc. It's all about the size. So this is our start, and we're focused on beef to start with and dairy, but then we'll be taking it down to the next scaled down size at the next iteration, so we can put it on sheep and goats as well. It's one tag, one life, and that's a requirement of the National Livestock Identification Scheme. So we have to destroy them at the end of the life of the animal. We've done a 100 tag trial. I'm just going to quickly show a little video. It only goes for 90 seconds. And then it's put together by CSIRO, so you have to wait. So we have a lot of supporters around the world, and they're coming from all sorts of places, not just farmers on farm, but also people like financiers. To know where your animals are, how many there are, and what condition they're in, we can actually start to create a whole new asset class. And when we do that, we're actually creating less risk and more transparency. And with that, we can start to think about the interest rates in which are currently charged on livestock, which are like 12 to 15%, and start reducing to the more like the 8%. And we're certainly in discussions with some big financial organisations. But in addition to that, they only offer around 10 to 30% typically in LVR. So LVR is your leverage rate. So what that means is if you have a $100 animal, you can only get $10 to $30 of that value of that $100 that you can unlock. But now all of a sudden, by reducing the risk and creating more transparency, we can actually lift that to like 85 to 100%. So on the Australian cattle herd alone, if they were all financed, and we could lift that LVR from 30% to 85% and bring the interest rates down from 12% to 8%, we could actually start to unlock around about $1.8 billion a year back into the system that is otherwise lost. It's lost opportunity to scale, drive efficiencies, etc. An example of where we're being placed, and this is by Bank of America, and they haven't looked at us because they like Ceres Tag. They've looked at us because right now, a whole lot of big animal health companies like Merck, Zoetis, Vetoquinol, etc., are getting into this monitoring space. And the reason being is that traditionally, particularly for feedlots, you might apply antibiotics quite broadly. But what we know, if you're monitoring this, you may not need to apply those antibiotics quite as wide, which means less sales of the antibiotics. We're talking about billions of dollars here. So they realised by investing upstream into monitoring, we can actually start to produce more sustainably, plus they can have other opportunities for their markets too by treating with nutrition or vaccines instead. So all of a sudden, there's a whole new interest in the monitoring because of the capabilities that are now available that were previously not there. So we're certainly in a nice little niche here. I don't know if that's there it is. So Ceres Tag sits in the intersection of wearable device monitoring and the data and analytics. So we don't just create the data, but we also do the analysis as well. The other important thing, and I think it's the next slide, no, the one after this one. But one of the important things is that we're an open platform, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. We haven't just looked at the tag itself because people do get fascinated by the tag, but the way you put it on the animal is also critically important. And it's hand up if you've actually ever put a tag on an animal. 1, 2, 3, yeah, all right. So for those that are not familiar with this, there's this stupid little pin that at the back that pushes through, and it's been around for about 30 years or so. And typically what happens if you're as hopeless at it as I am, you tag in the animal and the animal goes, oh, and you're still holding it and it rips through the bottom of the ear. Does that happen to people? Yep. Yeah, exactly. Or worse, you tag it and they pull it out, pull the whole handles out of your hand. The next thing they're flicking around because the animal's going, oh, I don't like this on my ear. So that becomes a health and safety issue for the actual operators. Now with Ceres Tag, we've actually put a lot of time and effort into designing and a lot of IP into designing an applicator. So this actually pushes together two flat surfaces. And you can see there, you can preload it and then you hit the red button and then opens. So the animal doesn't feel the stress. You might have seen in the video when he was actually putting the tag in, the animal went, I barely felt a thing. You know, it's changed the whole animal welfare and the whole safety of the operator completely. That's it's many of the things that we've thought about in this whole process. So we do have a lot of IP wrapped around that. And,
just before we move on from there, we've also taken into account the fact that there's a rising number of women on farm. And the current applicators is a full hand stretch for a woman to then, and if you're repeatedly doing that action, So girls who work in feedlots and places that actually end up with a repetitive stress injury because it's non-workable. So when airbags first came into cars, we killed women because we didn't measure a woman size and weight in a car for an airbag. This is not as extreme, but for workplace health and safety, if you're not taking into account who's using the tag and how the applicator. Also, there's a lot of itinerant workers through farms, so a lot of backpackers, a lot of inexperienced farm people, and they go up the non-kicking end, which means that they're tagging. So the part of the design for this was to make it simple, obvious, and by having a preloaded system, it's all loaded up and you just press a trigger. So
less stressful for the animal. I can see it looks like you put 2 holes in their ear rather than one.
it's also the size of the pins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've taken that into account. So if a current RFID tag is quite a big amount of skin and flesh displacement, and that causes.
Correct.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you, but those thoughts, because we're trying to look at a whole of supply network when we have created the platform of Ceres Tag. That includes who works in the industry, and the industry is changing to a much more female-based animal handling, as well as that itinerant worker space. So not everything has to be made for those huge farmer hands that are traditionally, if you Google what a farmer looks like, that visual is changing and the reality is changing. But it's still easy for boys to use too. We haven't overcomplicated it.
Thanks. So absolutely, and just to reiterate, the demand for us to fix this issue came from one of the biggest producers in Australia, up in the Northern Territory, and he says, look, I'm getting a lot of women coming through, a lot of backpackers, don't have an idea, don't want to hurt them, they get tired after doing about 50, we need them to do 500, can you take away all that stress? So we redesigned it completely. So our business model really reflects around, and this is so that we can be scalable. And the talk of today was global from day one. So I'm going to tell you why we can go global from day one. First of all, we don't have to set up any infrastructure. We operate via low Earth orbit satellite. So we literally can operate anywhere in the world. And that's why I'll be in South Africa soon. I've been in the US earlier this year. I was in Europe earlier this year. And we're getting a lot of interest from South America. And the reason being, South America has very, very poor infrastructure. You reckon it's bad here? Let me tell you, South America, challenge. Big challenge. So the fact that they can just go and put the tag on the ear and be able to go to their computer and look and see the data, brilliant, you know.
This tag follow the cattle, say if they export it to Indonesia?
Absolutely. In fact, we had a discussion only yesterday. I can't disclose what it was, but it was a government authority. And that's exactly what they're talking about, is improving because of, as soon as they get off the boat at the other end, whatever, you know, and that's where a lot of the welfare concerns are, is at the other end. So, yes, we do help them massively in that space. Now, we talked about an open platform before. We collect the data. So we create the data here, and we can update that with new algorithms onto the tag, or you can just operate as a standard tag. But once you get the data there, it updates 4 times a day, but we're recording and analysing the data the whole time. We take it to the cloud via the satellite, and then we offer an API to all the software systems. So whether you're a breeder or you're a backgrounder or you're a feedlot, it doesn't matter because they all like their own different types of software systems. What we supply is the data, the analysed data. Now, this is very, very critical because it's what the farmers have been looking for and I was applauded at a recent conference that I spoke at because we offered, finally, someone's not trying to force you to use this end of the system, and you can only see it if you use our software at this end of the system. And people are fed up because that end of the software system doesn't record the information they need for their type of business. They need to use that type of software. And this system doesn't talk to that system. And they're just fed up with it. So what we've done is completely made this an open platform. First time ever, we believe, from a livestock perspective. Who would have thought? But it also allows us to be scalable. And I come back to this, to be scalable is critical. So now we have these software platforms all promoting Ceres Tag so they can show the data on their particular platform. Doesn't matter where these software platforms are, whether they're operating in the US, South America, Southern Africa, doesn't matter. They want Ceres Tag so they can do their job. And it works. So you've seen the 100 tag trial. We're about to do, at the end of this year, we'll do a 500 tag trial. On the 1st of September, you'll see, I was back down here earlier, about a month ago, to do a ABC landline story. Melita and I, you'll see us on landline on the 1st of September. They've said that they'll also do another story on the 500 tag trial as well. And some of those tags will be up in up at Aileron, and we need a southern property as well. And Jamie and I have been discussing about that too. But then we'll go for the accreditation and then into first sales. So we can't do this. It's not just Melita and I in the team. We've actually got around about 100 people all collaborating together, from the software platform people through to, you know, CSIRO, James Cook. We've got arguably Australia's best industrial designer, grew up on a 5,000 acre cattle property, but he's constantly winning the National Design Awards as well, and has just won another one this year for fruit fly traps. So he's pretty brilliant. On top of this layer that we can't show, but we have a team of satellite engineers offshore. We have a team of manufacturing engineers offshore. So the team just continues to build bigger and bigger. We use Synapse as our data platform. And the reason why we use Synapse, and it's like a company of Data 61, is for the security of the data. Because we're using that platform, we get sovereign level data. And that's where the data will be API'd out to the end user platforms. So this is not just about us today. I wanted to quickly go through some points. Scalability, open platform, please, please, please. That's the way of the future. Don't design anything that's in a closed platform that you're forcing people to have to use you all the way through. Collaboration is the future. And for those who don't, I think they'll be pretty much locking themselves out. Structure, partnerships, sole trader, company shares, etc. We run under a company structure. We can't do this. I mean, this is a very expensive build, as you can imagine. We need shareholders. We have 23 shareholders at this time. For those who don't know how ASIC works, once we hit 50 shareholders, we actually become a publicly unlisted company, and that requires some other governance as well. So we've hit a point where our next investors will be coming in probably on bigger chunks of money. But up until now, it's really truly been, I would call them medium wealth sort of people, maybe one or two high net wealths, but maybe medium wealths. People have put it in their superannuation or whatever the case may be. There's all sorts of ways you can do in raising funds, and I'm happy to talk about that later. So the raising of the capital, well, let me tell you, there's grants, so many grants around. It's not funny. Now, if anyone says, I'm not going to put in a grant because it's so much effort, honestly, that effort for the grants is nothing. Do the grants. Apply for as many grants as you can. It's the highest value capital that you will get. And I'd like to just say, well, we're from Queensland, but I'm sure New South Wales have got the same, but federal government, state government, all got great incentives. They give incentives for investors through early stage investment company, for R&D, for developing new innovations. Just go and look for them because you really are well supported. They will be match funding, but if you've got those, let me tell you, the raising of the funds from other shareholders will be a lot easier. And we're very fortunate to have benefited from that. For us, currency is a bit of an issue because we will have to operate in US dollars. Our manufacturer requires us to do so. So our whole company will be turning in the next probably 12 months or 18 months to fully operational in US currency. So that just brings, there's multiple levels of complexity that comes when you do start to go international.
Are the tags manufactured in America or China?
Neither.
Neither.
No, and we had actually had to look at the political stuff that's going on at the moment, and so we're not in either of those.
I'm just curious if it was in Australia.
Well, we would like to. We really would. And it's not for the reasons that you think. It's the complexity of the electronics. Yeah, and being able to get them down to a size that we need to get the weight down to be able to put on the animals. They're the main drivers behind it, not what people think, oh, the price and stuff. That might be a side benefit, but it's not the primary benefit. It's just the fact that we can't get it. And we literally will be selling these by the millions. So we need that scalability too. We need, you know, the people we are working with have a history of backing entrepreneurs, and our manufacturer, certainly for the prototypes, has invested into us, and they'll scale with us. Third-party validation, go for third-party validation. If someone will write a letter early when I'm starting off, I think I might have even got some letters from New South Wales government. Robin might have written me a letter and said, this is a really good idea. You know, and because Robin thought it was a good idea, he's respected in the industry. I wasn't in the industry, I was in energy and infrastructure. But Robin's saying it was a good idea, then someone else wrote a letter to say, well, if Robin thought it was a good idea, I think it's a good idea too. And then continually you build up this, and then next thing, it's not Robin saying it, it's like the Department of Primary Industries of New South Wales or the rural industries federal government saying, yes, this is a good idea. All of a sudden you build up that, you know, wanting of what has to happen. And when you build up that want, then it starts to turn into cash as well, because you can put that in when you go for your grants. Outsourcing in-house salaries. So we outsource just about everything. The reason why we outsource is control of cash. I think you would have seen the back a bit. Oh, I did it again. So there's only four people actually in the company at this time. And everyone else is outsourced. The reason being is we have contracts in place that we can say, well, if you haven't delivered, go back and deliver. So it's a very important thing. If you've got salaried employees and you're filling all of these things with salaried employees and they don't deliver, guess what? It's your cost to go back and do it again. So that we can't operate like that forever, but for the moment, we do, because we want to control our outputs.
And we get everything quoted. Everything's quoted.
Yep.
And if there's going to be a variation, you tell us up front. And if you're going to come out, then that's our lawyers, our accountants, everyone. Everyone, it's a quote up front, because project drift is a thing. And we say, well, you quoted. And if we get an invoice that doesn't match the quote, we say, well, how come? And why didn't you tell us before the invoice hit the desk? And because the money it's shareholders' money, so I don't want to be seen to be, David and I don't want to be seen to be wasting shareholders' money. And secondly, it's a finite resource. We're trying to do a lot with a little. So don't be shy to ask for a quote and then question it. And then when the invoice comes in, if it doesn't match, ask why. and that's okay. We've had a couple of invoices adjusted. So, I mean, you've got to be nice about it, but it is what it is. Grant money's not free. So just because you've got grant money doesn't mean you can just throw it around. You've got to use it properly. And the people asking you for services have to be fair about it as well.
So I'll give you a little startup tip here. It is easier to get grant funding if you outsource, right? If it's paid employees, it's actually harder to get your grant funding because you're not supposed to use that money for employees. But if you're outsourcing, paying contract, supposedly creating employment through doing so, then the grant money is a little bit easier to get. So it's just a trick of, not a trick, but that's just the way it's structured. For instance, mentors. If you don't have a mentor, please, please, please go and get yourself a mentor, whether it's informal, formal, whatever you want. We've got advisory. So we've got advisory from producers that represent about 1 million cattle that we just went up and we just said to, it's a director of Ag Force and the head of the cattle committee for New South Wales farmers and a director of Dairy Australia and some northern guys as well. And they're more than happy to give you guidance on your product. Because at the end of the day, we're expecting them to use it. So, it's just something that you should do. We actually have a proper board now because we're getting to the sort of size and valuation that we require a proper governance board. So we have an independent chairman for the company. So if the shareholders have issues and I'm not being reasonable as the other director and the CEO, then the shareholders have someone else to go back to as well. Now, this is something, if you're thinking about going into a startup yourself, never, with a friend or whatever, never, ever, ever 50-50. Someone must be in control, whether you're the slight minority or it's 51-49, whatever, but someone must have control to be able to make a decision because too many times I've seen it over and over and over again, and unfortunately even experienced it. If you have a 50-50 and you don't agree on something, everything stops. Everything stops. And when that happens, nobody wins. It's just a complete waste. So that's just something I'll put out there for you to think about. Always have options. I can't tell you the amount of times where we've hit crossroads, and this happens with all startups, and you want to go in a particular direction and you can't for some reason. Always have an option B, preferably an option C and D as well. Always give yourselves the way to be able to take a pivot or to use a different supplier or whatever the case may be. Give yourself options. Marketing profile. We have paid this much for any of our marketing, yet we're probably one of the best known startups out there. Zero. No marketing at all. And you shouldn't have to. If you're making yourself available and it's a lot of hard work and footwork to start with, but you can get noticed if you truly do have an innovative product. So just be careful on your spend. If you go into you Google smart tags for livestock, you'll find that we'll dominate the first page, and that's obvious. And we've not paid for any AdWords or anything like that. It's just the number of hits that have come onto our website. And focus and tenacity. Just to be passionate about something's not enough. You really got to be tenacious. You will get knocked around. You'll get beaten up. You'll get people criticising you. You just got to take it. You're going to have to build some broad shoulders and keep going. Thanks. And it's not for everyone.
Thank you so much, David and Melita. That was very interesting and insightful, and I'm sure quite helpful for the founders that we have in the room here today. I had a list of questions pre-planned, but you've actually answered most of them. But maybe I'll touch on a few that I had that I'm not sure you got to. So my understanding from your business model is where you make money is by selling the tags. Is that correct? Or are you doing data mining as well?
So we have numerous streams of revenue.
Yeah.
Certainly selling the tag is one.
Yeah.
Selling the algorithms is another one. So our algorithms are on a platform similar to buying apps on your Apple phone, you know, so we can't carry all of the algorithms on the tag when you buy it, but rather depending on where you sit in the supply chain, whether you're a breeder, a backgrounder, a feedlotter or a live exporter, you'll be looking for different things. Like for instance, if you're a feedlotter, you might be after BRD. If you're a breeder, you might be after 3-day sickness, for instance. If you're a live exporter, you're going to be looking for animal welfare type things. These are different types of algorithms that can be updated to the tag. Now, the beauty of this is if I sell my animals to you, you get my data as well.
Only the tag.
Only
the tag data. So the reason we're able to do that is it's only tag data. It's not personal identifiable data. That goes through to the software. So just the tag data transfers along. And that's the provenance data to ensure provenance traceability. So when we talk about data, just important that you know it's not farmer data. It's just tag data.
Great, thank you. Just in terms of the global aspect of your story, can you talk a little bit about how you facilitated some of the key global relationships that you've developed, and sort of any tips that any of our founders who may be looking to scale globally might find useful in that space?
So we've been, I heard the term, you know, luck is where is it hard work and opportunity meet. We've had a fair bit of that as well. But if you've got something that's worthwhile, I mean, we've used people like Trade and Investment Queensland. We've used Austrade. We've used, because we're partnered with CSIRO, they have international partnerships as well. So we've been pretty lucky that, in fact, I look at Jamie. I had dinner with Eric from Texas only 2 nights ago. You know, we've got good people that we seem to be, you know, keen to collaborate and keen to work with us. And I think that's just what you've got to be. You just got to be open to working with people as much as possible. Even competitors, hopefully you're not a head-to-head competitor and you actually can collaborate and do stuff. And it's amazing who wants to introduce you to other parties. Yeah. So I guess it's just we've been in the market long enough now that we've really collected this collection of international partners. Yeah.
Speaking of working with partners, Melita, my understanding is that you've recently gone full-time in the business. Maybe you can talk about working together and how you manage working together as partners and business partners.
Well, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be for a start. Just on that partnership thing too, not being afraid to introduce yourself. So that's probably been an interesting path to walk. So not being afraid. So up until a couple of months ago, I had 3 people on LinkedIn. I'm now up to 40, but I had to learn it's okay to ask people to link in. And because I wasn't in business before, I was a teacher before. So your social media presence as a teacher is pretty under the radar because you don't want everybody to find you as a primary school, high school teacher. So that's been a new thing for me. So to learn that it's okay and that people will link you back. So that's been a new experience. But working together has been good. I am today one of 4 women in the room. So that's a high point. I'm usually the only one. I am a rare species. I am a female co-founder in ag tech. There's not many of us out there, and I'm not a coder, and I'm not the tech person, and so that's an interesting place to be in an ag tech room as well. So, but we've worked well together because we both bring something unique to the table. So I have got a lot of years of experience in the producer side of this business and had an understanding of that supply network. And so when it came time to having the ear tag and the retention system, I said, well, we need to go and talk to the processor plants, because when these animals start the process point, those guys at the beginning have only seconds when that animal is in their care, from when it's alive to when it's on hooks, and that if we slow that process down, we will devalue that animal. So we've gone right to all those parts of the supply chain because we knew that we should. And David had a lot of the business experience, so that's been really beneficial to us, and I've learned a lot, and I think we've learnt from each other. And Dave had to be very patient with me at the beginning because I didn't know, and I was nervous to walk into the room, and I was nervous to contribute. I used to just sit there and say, hope no one asked me a question. And it's taken a while to be in that space, but it certainly works. And we complement each other, but we do have to remember that there is a time when we shouldn't talk about Ceres Tag, and we should help our kids with their homework and remember to ring our parents and things, because we are very passionate about our project as well. But there are times when actually we weren't sure how people would respond to having a husband and wife team, because there's a little bit of that corporate thing. But then we're in ag, and ag is built on husband and wife teams working together and making a difference and complementing each other. So if you look at it that way, we were a natural fit. And the startup, if starting a life together and a family together isn't a good kind of baseline for how to get through stuff, it was good. So looking at it from a different angle, I suppose.
That was an excellent answer. Thank you very much. At this stage, I would like to open it up to the audience to see if there are any questions from the audience. Yeah, thank you. He will roam with the microphone, or should we just repeat the question, Hugh?
Oh, I can run, right?
Okay. Thanks, Hugh.
Are there any questions from the audience?
Great stuff, guys. Really, really interesting. Who's the customer? So is the customer the farmer, or is it the industry, or is it, the overarching bodies? And then the second follow on from that is, what's the return on investment for the farmer if the farmer's investing in this?
So I'll answer the first question. Initially, the customer will be the farmer. There's no doubt about that. We anticipate, as the industry gets more used to collecting data, accessing data, using data, all of those, there's a very good chance that the customer for us will change. And it could be financial institutions wanting to offer a better opportunity for financing their complete operations, and they require everyone to have a tag. The bank may supply the tag, or they may say, give extra money for the farmer to actually buy the tag. Or the animal health companies, for instance. I mean, pharmaceuticals are a very expensive item. To know when an animal is actually sick rather than waiting for it or about to be sick because of the monitoring, rather than waiting till it is very sick and obvious to the eye. There's certainly advantages for them if they want to sell their products, and they may supply the ear tag just so they can get that product supply too. But in other locations in a country near to us at the moment, they've got big disease issues. Like and I'm talking about New Zealand, for instance. It's got Mycoplasma bovis pretty broad, and it's pretty public. So, I can say it has spread quite broadly. So has African swine flu in China. But when those sort of outbreaks occur, it costs a lot of money to try and get control of it. And if they'd been able to detect it and then track it, then they could have isolated that rather than having it as broad spread. There's reports that New Zealand has spent well and truly over $1 billion trying to eradicate that disease. I'm not sure whether they're at the moment. I think they're starting to have success, but you know, if they'd spent 200 million on putting this right across their whole herd, it's not a bad economic difference there.
And ROI, so
Return on investment, well, I use that financing one as an example. That equates to around about $67 per animal per year that you'd have, rather than giving it to the bank, that you could have that for your own operation. Now, that would well and truly pay for the tag multiple times over. And we're still coming to the final, but we have we know it will be in double figures, not triple figures. But there's all the pasture utilisation. There's not just economic benefit here. There's environmental, there's social impacts in which the tag will create as well. You know, I look at Kyle because I know Kyle's pretty passionate about criminology and you know, stopping animal theft and other things that happen on properties. And if we can help detect that, you know, an animal could be worth between $1,500 to $2,000 for a commercial animal. If it's a Wagyu or something, probably much more. You know, one of those gets stolen, $1,500. Let me tell you, that's a pretty good, pretty safe bet. But we're talking about insurance premiums. That big flood up in northern Queensland at the beginning of this year, 650,000 animals perished. Not one was insured, not one. The reason being is the premiums are just far too high. So if we could have helped by reducing the risk, creating more transparency, then, you know, could have brought those premiums down to a level that people would go insure. So when that happened, it wouldn't be the big impact that it is. Queensland government lost about $2 billion out of the economy from that disaster, from the cattle alone.
Thanks, David. Robin Dobos got mentioned. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but anyway, thank you. One of the questions I have, as you know, when it comes to marking at marking time and all that, a lot of the year tags are applied at that particular time.
Yeah.
Now, your prototype, your MVP, probably won't be used at that stage, or are you looking to use that at that stage on the smaller animals, smaller ears? Or are you just looking at adult animals with larger ears at the moment with the MVP?
No. We need these. We would like to see these tagged at weaner stage and carried all the way through, because it builds up the whole provenance story, create value along the way. Eventually we see that, you know, you're not just selling an animal to the next owner, you're selling the animal plus a packet of data, and that data ensures the provenance that what you say is where that animal's happened, and hopefully also that it's had all its injections and dosings, etc. And we can do that through Bluetooth, collecting that on the tag. That whole provenance issue to create new marketing opportunities for our products is just huge. There's already $2 billion worth of fake meat traded, Australian fake meat, in the world. We're hoping to reduce that.
You mentioned that you've got you're developing an API. Have you had much interaction with some of the existing, up and coming livestock management softwares in Australia? Because I know that they're it almost lines up perfectly for a couple that have come into the industry.
Short answer is yes. Yes. In fact, we've got a list of about 30 initial ones that we're partnering with. Some of it here from in Armidale. People like Maya, for instance, would be one that comes immediately to mind that we would be keen to partner with. And you're right, literally they take up where we leave off. And it's that transfer. And those software platforms are very, very clever. Like, it's, for us, we have to be very careful because we create the data, we do the analysis, but our passion is farming. And we get caught all the time pulling ourselves back because we want to understand how that affects the soil types and, you know, moving the animals around and what it does and all those things. And really, that's for smart minds like Jamie to work out rather than us. We create the data, we analyse and we transfer.
Hi, Melita and David. Thank you for being here. Can I just ask you, what do you think we need to be doing more of as a university in terms of students coming through or startups coming through? Could you just give us a little whisper of your wisdom?
Yeah, all right. Well, don't be shy. It's number one. Don't be shy and create opportunities. I think, Lou, we talked about this before, I think that you guys should have encourage investors to come in and actually have a look at what's there, because they don't just, oh, yes or no, I like it or I don't, or anything like that. But they actually offer some wisdom when they do come in, and they may be a little overcritical at times, but it's always good feedback to get. Personally, you know, being in Armidale, while there's probably some great investors here, you know, there's people like Sydney Angels. I'd organise a trip to go to Sydney and take some of your best startups and organise a specific night of the year where the Armidale rural investors are there. But look, just keep encouraging, getting in front of people all the time.
Thank you so much. Did you have a question? Yep, sure.
Okay. Well, perhaps a couple of questions. Are the tags transferable, or once they're on the animal, that's it? And when the animal, say, is sent to the abattoir, the tag is not recoverable? And the second question would be, in raising capital, what sort of typical sums of money would an investor put into your company?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer all of those. So at the tag itself is one tag, one life, because we're going for national identification standards. From a business point of view, it helps us a lot also, and because we get more tag sales. But apart from that, the international standard says that if you're going to be provenance accredited, then you can't reuse the tag. Now, there's another couple of things there. If you were to transfer the tag from one animal to the other, your risk of your biosecurity risk goes up considerably because you're moving from one animal to the other. The other thing is we don't want to have tech that's been on an animal for 3, 5 or 10 years still out there. Because as you know, with your mobile phone or your smartphone, you're probably replacing it every 2 to 3 years, and there's new models coming out every like 18 months. So we won't be too dissimilar. The ICAR, the international standard, before you even get to the national standard, also requires a renewal of accreditation every 5 years. So we see a new tag coming out every 5 years, although the previous one will keep operating as well. From an investment point of view, initially the smallest amount that we would accept was around $25,000. And really for those mid-wealth type people, putting it into their super as part of that's my high risk sort of thing. That's the way they thought about it when they actually invested. And, you know, we were very grateful. We made a decision early on to bring in shareholders and start building this to be a big company. So we were instantly thinking, this is a big company, it's an international company right from day one. We now have 23 shareholders. The investments that 25 was the smallest. We're now looking at, you know, over $1 million for an investment. And right now we're seeking, you know, on a 24 million pre-money, about $8 million investment in this. And that'll take that to all the way to the commercial manufacture and distribution straight out into market. So that's where we're at the moment. There's probably going to be a whole lot of stuff coming out about that in the not too distant future. The type of investor has moved from the individual now who have done very well and grown with us. You know, so there's a clear return on the investment of the investor in investing in and the very, very early ones also benefit of the early stage investment company benefits from the federal government. But the ones coming in now are either going to be very high net wealth people or companies, corporates, or family offices. That's the next stage of our investment routine. And to be honest, we've hired some people to help us because, you know, we've done it all ourselves to date, but we've moved to new lawyers. We're using Clayton Utes as our lawyers. Expensive, but bloody good. We've moved to a more sophisticated accountancy group as well that's multinational. So it's one of those growth things. Each time you grow, there's new pains and you have to move through them. And we're certainly going through one right now, but fortunately we're in a very good position to do so.
Just with that changing from our suburban lawyers and accountants, part of that was to access Austrade and their international investment opportunities. They don't want to talk, international groups don't want to talk to David and I because we're founders, we're excited, we're passionate. They want to talk to our accountants who are sensible and calm and have all the numbers. So there's a level of credibility that we needed. Now we're at that next level. And as David said, it is a new expense, but it is also opens us to new opportunities. And he also mentioned regulation. So one of the things in startup world is disrupt. So, which is good, but you can actually disrupt within the regulation because often regulation does have a purpose. So for NLIS, for traceability and biosecurity in Australia and whatever it's called in other countries, NATE in New Zealand and etc., is there for food safety and food security. You don't want to be disrupting that. But so we talk about enhancing and we're using regulation, one as a barrier to entry to people who don't understand the industry that have gone, I've got cool tech, all that regulation is just going to slow me down. Well, it actually keeps them out of scalability and international scalability that David spoke about. So we are using regulation to our benefit. Also that every 5 years you need to reapply for that accreditation. It's a natural milestone then for we should have a new and improved iteration of our product every 5 years. So it's just built in through the regulation and we use it to our advantage. So, but we are still to a degree disrupting how that delivery is made, but we're taking what is good. So don't get too excited as a startup that everything that exists is rubbish. A lot of it was put there for a reason. So that was all.
So we are on track to be the world's first smart ear tag for livestock to be accredited to ICAR, which is the International Community for Animal Recordings, and therefore likely also for Australia, New Zealand, etc.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Okay, I congratulate you. You have really cracked the tricky problem with these e-tags. So well done, and I really like how you set up this startup. You know, like that's the most practical presentation I've seen so far on this issue. It's so hard. My question to you is, how can we leverage? How can the federal government leverage on the great work you're doing to build like an industry in Australia? Like, how can we value add and get more jobs into agriculture as a result of this sort of technology and what you've done?
That's an easy question. No, we're Australian. Our head office will be here in Australia. All of the animal science stuff, all the R&D will all be done here. All right, so we will be creating all the smart jobs will be here. So the offshore wise, it will be more along the distribution lines, There might be some field testing people, but all of the smarts and stuff absolutely here, because these are highly educated people that we would need to employ. In fact, we've just employed, we're very proud to say we've just employed someone. They're a lot younger than myself, fortunately, but he was a director of livestock monitoring for Merck, which was formerly known as Allflex, right? Allflex was sold to Merck. So we're getting that caliber of people coming to us now to be employed, or we're able to access those sort of people. And, you know, once we get those couple that are there, what we want to do is invest in the youth and bring them through as well. So the not necessarily the best graduates, believe it or not, I don't believe in employing necessarily the smartest all the time. What I want to employ is driven individuals. Ones that are passionate about it, know what they want to do, and willing to, occasionally they might make a mistake, but, you know, rather than just theoretical type people. So, you know, and we want to invest in that youth and bring them through with us.
How do we get you to set up an office or a branch in Armadale?
Well, I have talked to the New South Wales Regional about the government, New South Wales government, about doing so. I didn't get a response, so I take it they're not that interested.
Thank you so much for those answers. And thank you for those questions. We're actually over time. I might just close with one more really fast question, just a quick answer. For many of our founders, we talk to a lot of our founders that are just starting about IP, so intellectual property protection, patents. There's obviously an uncomfortable stage when you're starting out in terms of having an idea, needing to share enough information to enough people to get the right resources to get things rolling, but not obviously giving it away so someone else can steal your idea. At the same time, there's a fair bit of discomfort financially, obviously, putting enough money in to get things rolling, sitting through that financially uncomfortable period until you become profitable. So my questions for you are twofold. One is, what was your approach to your IP protection? And two is, how long did it take you to become profitable? And did you have a maximum amount of time in mind?
All right, I might answer the IP one. So I encourage all startups to tell everyone what you're doing. Don't worry about secret source, because honestly, if someone wants to steal it, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. So we told everyone what we're doing, how we do it, up front all the time. There were some people who went, oh yeah, no, I'm going to go away and do that myself, and you never hear from them again. You know, it's all bluff and win, because to commit to something like this, or whatever your startup happens to be, to try and copy it, takes effort. Now, you know, I have a favourite saying, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So go for it. Tell everyone, just do it.
Did you patent your idea?
Sure, we patented our idea, and but you know, we bought the cheapest patent possible at the start. Now we've got a whole suite of patents, but you know, we were able to do that as we got investors in and stuff. But to start with, you just got to get out there and pitch away. And well, we're still 12 months away from being in market, so we're still in development. In fact, we're at late stage development, almost at commercialization. And that's the exciting bit. And that's why you need that next round of funding to come in. But making use of those funds wisely is also the trick. Now, like I said, you know, this marketing and profile stuff, let me tell you, you can waste a whole lot of money on that. Oh my God. You know, just being, you know, just doing stuff, going to conferences and all this stuff. So simple rule, I don't attend conferences unless I'm speaking at them. Simple as that. Nor anyone else in our company. So we miss out on quite a few, but that's fine. If you want us there, then we're happy to be there, make ourselves available. But yeah, just be very, very careful. Cash is king, absolute king when you're doing a startup. I'll leave it at that.
But that also about the IP. By pitching it and talking about it, that's how we improved it. We improved our idea by talking about it. And we would never have got our initial funding from MLA, MDC and CSIRO if we hadn't been talking to them about it. And they said, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Keep talking to people. And we just got better and better, and we pivoted and we took some things out and put some things in. And there have been people that have taken some of our idea, but because they haven't thought it right through like we had, their product isn't as comprehensive as ours. They've got a bit, or they've got what we talked about before we'd workshopped it up a bit more. And so the reason we didn't go with that was the failings that they're now having. So that, sure, people are going to look over your shoulder, but they'll do that anyway. What you've got to keep is the why you're doing this, why you're making it and who you're making it for. And that keeps refining your idea into an actual business.
Just to quickly finish off, I was a bit sarcastic on the New South Wales government. I'm working with UNE right now on getting some projects up right here in Armidale. We're very excited.
I'm sure they bend over backwards to help.
No, we've been blessed. We'd love to talk to them too. Yeah.
And we talk to everyone.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, we've run a bit over time. So David and Melita, thank you so much for your time and your inspiring story. It's been really wonderful to hear your thoughts and your experience, and a very exciting business. And thank you everyone for coming, and have a lovely afternoon and weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.